Welcome. Thank you for watching this teaching video from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. Please check out our other videos and don't forget to like and subscribe. Our mission is to help people come to know Jesus better and love Him more every day. We believe this will not only help our own spiritual growth, but also help us better influence the community and the world for Christ. For more information about Oak Tree, please visit us at oaktreechurch.com. There you'll find past message series, online giving options, and more information about our discipleship process that we call The Path. Now enjoy this message. We'd love to hear from you in the comments or the website contact form. Thank you.
Morning, church. As Pastor said, we're going to finish off this series on Messianic prophecy and all what was fulfilled and what was to come. And I'm going to finish off by talking about Jesus' miracles. And today is actually going to be a lot of fun because of the way we're studying this and the way we're going to teach this. We're going to be jumping around a lot in the Old Testament. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. But it's actually kind of really cool as you study this. And I'm not going to go through every miracle. What I'm going to do is give you guys a broad overview of what kind of miracles and what they accomplished. So before I do that, I actually wanted to go, and when you're studying it and you think, were these all the miracles? What happened? And I want to go look at what John said at the end of the Gospels. And so in John 21, the last two verses of John, 24 and 25, it says, "This is a disciple who testifies about these things and has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true. There are many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written." I always love reading that. It's really cool. It's really important. Jesus did so much. He was here for over 30 years. We know he lived as a human. He had the prophet. He did a lot of these things. So the Bible obviously can't contain every single thing he did. So that begs the next question. Why were these miracles recorded? What was the purpose of these things being recorded? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is why were these recorded? What did they show? And what did they look forward to? And so one of the most important things was these miracles proved who Jesus was. They showed what he was here to do. And what did they prove? Well, they proved that Jesus was from God. They proved that Jesus was that authority. How do we know this? Well, only God can do these miraculous deeds, right? If we look at a couple verses in the Old Testament, first in Deuteronomy and then in Psalm. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 21, it says, "He, the Lord, is the one you should praise. He is your God, the one who has done these great and awesome things for you that you have seen." And he reminded them, yes, you Israelites, you saw that God did these miraculous signs. And then the psalmist in Psalm chapter 105, verse 5 said, "Recall the miraculous deeds he performed, his mighty acts and the judgments he decreed. Bring to mind, recall, God does these miracles, God does these mighty acts." And God said that he would send somebody in his name. And how do we recognize the one sent in his name? Well, again, in Deuteronomy, this time in chapter 13, it says, starting in verse 1, "Suppose a prophet or one who foretells by dreams should appear among you and show you a sign or wonder, and the sign or wonder should come to pass concerning what he said to you, namely, let us follow other gods, gods whom you have not previously known, and let us serve them. You must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer, for the Lord your God will be testing you to see if you love him with all your mind and being. You must follow the Lord your God and revere only him, and you must observe his commandments, obey him, serve him, and remain loyal to him." So what do we see here? Well, somebody else might come along and do things and do all these signs to show people, hey, I am from God. But then if he teaches a different message, he's obviously not from God. And so we know that Jesus performed signs and miracles, but he also taught and he also pointed them back only to God. So we know that Jesus would come, he would do that, but he would speak for God too. Deuteronomy 18, verse 18, the Lord is talking, he's talking future, and he says, "I will raise up a prophet like you for them among their fellow Israelites. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them whatever I command." And again in Isaiah, looking forward even further in the future, Isaiah said the same thing. In Isaiah 11, in verse 2, it said, "The Lord's Spirit will rest on him, a spirit that gives extraordinary wisdom, a spirit that provides the ability to execute plans, a spirit that produces absolute loyalty to the Lord." And then in Isaiah 42, verses 6 and 7, "I, the Lord, officially commission you. I take hold of your hand, I protect you and make you a covenant mediator for people, and a light to the nations, to open blind eyes, to release prisoners from dungeon, those who live in darkness from prisons." So this person that the Lord was sending would come, and he would speak in the Lord's name, he would do these miracles, and he would be the light to the nations. That was Jesus. And so we know that he taught. We looked over the last couple of weeks. We looked at what he taught on. We looked at what was coming and why he was teaching these ways. So today I wanted to say, well, what about the signs that would identify him? And so Jesus did a lot of miracles. But they really all came down into three types of miracles. And the three types of miracles he did were provision miracles, healing miracles, and nature miracles. There's actually some fun things as we look at that and break that down further. Each of these three categories actually revealed a name of God. Each of these three categories were something we saw in the Old Testament and something that we were looking forward to in the kingdom that they were looking forward to. And so these were not just miracles, these were not just, I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to help you guys and identify who I am and that what was said in the Bible is coming to pass. So the first set of miracles I wanted to look at were provision miracles. And provision miracles revealed the name of God, Jehovah Jireh. And Jehovah Jireh means the Lord will provide. And there are actually several different types of provision miracles. But the most common one that everyone's going to think of right away, if I say the feeding of the 5,000, everyone's going to nod their, yep, the feeding of the 5,000. So this miracle is kind of cool because this one points back and forward a lot. There are several times where we see this. The two most common ones was all the way back in Exodus. When the people were traveling, what did God do? He provided them manna. He gave them water in the desert. He gave them food. They never had to worry. They were in a place where there was no way they should have survived as long as they did. They should not have had food. They should not have had water. And yet, God gave them not just food and water, but enough food and water to eat and be satisfied. They wouldn't have just enough to survive. They had enough to where God said, take everything of your fill, take enough to where you will have what you want to eat. And that was God providing. God will provide, and God did provide. And then, actually jumping forward a bit, another one that people always think of is Elijah the prophet, when he was staying with the widow and her son, and she had no food to eat. And the entire time she was there, every day, she made food for him. She made food for herself and for her son. And even though we always talk about how there was a little bit left, God said, well, I am with you. I will provide you enough to eat. So we see that God can provide miraculously, not just something, but enough. But he actually also said that he would continue to do this in the future. And so in Isaiah chapter 61, verse 11, "For just as the ground produces its crop and a garden yields its produce, so the sovereign Lord will cause deliverance to grow and will give his people a reason to praise him in the sight of all nations." And I like this verse because he was reminding them, just like I can grow food and crops for you, I can also grow deliverance for you. Looking forward to that, God will provide. That doesn't just mean for physical. God will provide for physical and spiritual. God will provide in the future, and he will cause it to come. So, what was this miracle supposed to do? It was supposed to point people back. Hey, remember in the past, you guys studied this, your ancestors, God provided for them. But God also said that I'm going to do something in the future. In the kingdom, here are things that are going to happen. And this miracle is supposed to remind you of that and show you that, yes, Jesus was ready to set up the kingdom. In the future, God will provide a lot of things that we don't see today. In Isaiah 55:13, it says, "Evergreens will grow in place of thorn bushes. Firs will grow in place of nettles. They will be a monument to the Lord, a permanent reminder that will remain." Going back to Joel, in Joel chapter 2, verse 26. You will have plenty to eat. Your hunger will be fully satisfied. You will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has acted wondrously in your behalf. My people will never again be put to shame. And I really like this verse. This is in Amos, a little less known book of the Bible that we don't normally go to. But in Amos chapter 9, verses 13 and 14, be sure of this, the time is coming, says the Lord, when the plowman will catch up to the reaper, and the one who stomps the grapes will overtake the planter. Juice will run down the slopes. It will flow down all the hillsides. I will bring back my people Israel. They will rebuild the cities lying in rubble and settle down. They will plant vineyards and drink the wine they produce. They will grow orchards and eat the fruit they produce. God said there is coming a time in the future when all these things will happen. You will have plenty to eat. You have plenty of food. In fact, you will be harvesting so fast it's going to catch up with you. And I like how he said, you will be fully satisfied. Even today, people aren't always fully satisfied. But especially in that time period, they were struggling with a lot. There was famine in the land. They only had a little bit. And then Jesus did this miracle, and it's supposed to recall, hey, in the kingdom, God did say we're all going to have enough to eat. And here he is making sure that everyone had. And in the miracle of the 5,000, what happened? Everyone ate till they were full, and then they had so much left over. There was more than enough for everyone to eat to where there was tons of leftovers. So another cool thing about the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 is, aside from the resurrection of Jesus, this is the only thing that is recorded in all four Gospels. So why is that important? Well, this miracle really did kind of highlight who God is and what he could do. Not only can God be with us, not only can we always think of miracles as healing, that's the big one. Oh, God can heal, God can heal. God can do more than heal. God can provide, and he can provide what we would say is the impossible. And one thing about God providing us is when we say, oh, I have something, I have enough, or this he will provide, we always think God will provide as I have enough to get by. God says, no, I will provide in abundance. I will provide to where there was more left over than when it started. I will provide to you to where you'll be fully satisfied. And he promised that in this kingdom, everyone would be fully satisfied. They would have everything they need. And this kind of abundance, this promise, was only from God. And they were looking forward to that. They were really looking forward to those promises. But they didn't actually listen to Jesus. And that's kind of the point of all these miracles. Jesus was showing this, but they didn't actually understand. Just like the last couple of weeks. He was showing, but they didn't understand. So there's actually one other thing under provision miracles, not just the feeding people, but Jesus' first recorded miracle, water to wine. Now, we think of that and it's like, okay, water to wine, they had drink, but this was actually significant. A lot of these verses I just read talked about two things, right? They will have enough food and their vineyards will produce enough. So again, Jesus was showing this. And it kind of points back a little bit too, because if you look at Psalm 107, in verses 37 to 38, the psalmist said, they cultivated fields and planted vineyards, which yielded a harvest of fruit. He blessed them so they became very numerous. He would not allow their cattle to decrease in number. So again, provision is food, drink, everything. And then looking forward to the kingdom with those things too, also in Jeremiah. They will come, in Jeremiah 31, 12 to 14, it says, they will come and shout for joy on Mount Zion. They will be radiant with joy over all the good things the Lord provides. The grain, the fresh wine, the olive oil, the young sheep and calves he has given to them. They will be like a well-watered garden and will not grow faint or weary anymore. At that time, young women will dance and be glad. Young men and old men will rejoice. I will turn their grief into gladness. I will give them comfort and joy in place of their sorrow. I will provide the priests with abundant provisions. My people will be filled to the full with the good things I provide. And we see this a lot, and then looking forward to what we see, there will be feasting, there will be celebration, people will be joy, they will be filled to abundance. God will provide everything for them. This isn't just, oh, here's the bare minimum, you need food and water to survive. No, God says, I will provide all sorts of food, all sorts of meats, all sorts of drink, wine. I will provide it all to where you will be satisfied, you will be rejoicing, you will be glad. And so these miracles were meant to show the Lord's provision. The Lord will provide, the Lord can provide, and Jesus was there to provide and give them a sneak peek of the kingdom that was ready to be set up. So there was also another set of miracles I said, and that was healing miracles. These are the ones we always focus on. God can heal, God can heal. And that's really cool, because it is true. And there's actually a name of God for that. It's Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. God is a God who heals. He's not a God who causes us to have pain. Now, these kind of things can happen, but he is meant to, and he will heal. So, there's actually 3 subsets of healing. The first subset of healing is physical healing miracles. And this one's a lot of fun because we always look at this and you read that and they go, why were they surprised when he could heal? Why did they do this? Well, because only God can heal. If you look back in Exodus, God is promising the Israelites, and he said in Exodus 15:26, if you will diligently obey the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and pay attention to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, then all the diseases that I brought on the Egyptians I will not bring on you, for I, the Lord, am your healer. Now, it's important to note here, this isn't a promise that every time we obey God, we're not going to have physical illness. What I do want to show here is God saying that he does have control over this. God does have the ability to heal. He does have the ability to prevent these things, because he is the Lord, the healer. And then we look also that God can give the diseases and he can take them away. And so there are some fun prophecy verses about that too. And the first one is in Isaiah 35. And Isaiah 35, 5 and 6. We looked at this one before, but it says, then blind eyes will open, deaf ears will hear, the lame will leap like a deer, the mute tongue will shout for joy. Isaiah 29:18 says kind of the same thing. At that time, the deaf will be able to hear the words read from a scroll, and the eyes of the blind will be able to see through deep darkness. But then there's one more that really points forward too. In Isaiah 53, verse 4, it says, but he lifted up our illnesses. He carried our pain, even though we thought he was being punished, attacked by God, and afflicted for something he had done. This coming person would be able to heal the blind. He would be able to heal the mute and the lame, and he would actually take our pain upon himself. Jesus fulfilled all that. He went in his ministry, he healed them, he did that, and in the end, he took our pain upon himself. So why were these healing miracles important? Was it just that he was healing people who were hurting? Was it just that while he was here, he was healing them? No, just like the other ones, this was supposed to point forward to what God had promised would happen in the kingdom. In Isaiah 33:24, God says, no resident of Zion will say, I am ill. The people who live there will have their sin forgiven. And so again, remember what Jesus did? He said, what's easier, to heal or to forgive sins? God says they're the same thing. The one who heals is the one who forgives. God is the one who heals, and he was the one who forgave. Later on, a couple verses down, again, what I just see, the lame will walk, the mute will talk, the blind will see. This is something in the kingdom, and Jesus was trying to show them that. Another fun thing is if you look in Jeremiah. I want to look in Jeremiah 30, verse 12, and in the first part of 17. It says, moreover, the Lord says to the people of Zion, your injuries are incurable, your wounds are severe. Well, that's helpful. Their injuries aren't curable. Their wounds are so severe that nothing. But then he continues on and says in verse 17, yes, I will restore you to health. I will heal your wounds. I, the Lord, affirm it. Wounds are incurable to us. Wounds are incurable on earth, not to the Lord who heals. He can heal even what we say is unhealable, incurable. And then later on in Jeremiah 33, verse 6, but I will surely heal the wounds of the city and restore it and its people to health. I will show them abundant peace and security. Just like with provisions, God went, I could just heal you, but I'm going to heal you and restore you. I'm going to provide you peace and security. When God does something, it's above and beyond what we expect. And these miracles were supposed to be a prelude to that. These miracles were showing, again, what is coming in the kingdom. So, along with physical healing, there was also another thing Jesus did that had to do with healing. And that was casting out demons. And that's actually a part of healing miracles. When people had demonic possession, when people had these things, we saw all sorts of physical ailments and physical problems that gave all the people in the region, oh yeah, he's demon possessed. Well, how do you know? Well, do you see what he's doing? Do you see what's afflicting him? So when Jesus was casting out demons, that was a type of healing. This also pointed back. Because if we look back in the Bible, we look in Job, Satan had to come to God, right? Satan was still under God's authority. So that means that God has the authority to cast out demons. God has the authority to do this. Do men have the authority over demons? No, only God. And that's actually an interesting point, because guess what? What did they try to accuse him of doing? Well, he cast out demons in the name of the demons. He cast out demons in the name of Satan. And what did Jesus say? Basically, how foolish are you? What kind of person or what kind of house goes against itself? What kind of house says, oh, I'm going to inflict wounds on myself? No. Jesus pointed out, a house divided against itself cannot stand. A kingdom against itself will fall. Jesus was not here, and Jesus did not have the power of demons because he was from them. He had the power over demons because he was from God. So, we also know, and this one doesn't have one specific thing, but we also know that in the future, looking at Revelation, in Jesus' kingdom, Satan will be bound and tied. In Jesus' kingdom, there won't be that sort of influence. So this was another prelude to the kingdom. There's actually one more type of healing. And you're like, wait, physical healing, casting out demons? What other kind of healing is there? Well, the other kind of thing that Jesus came and he showed through his miracles was when he raised people from the dead. That was the ultimate form of healing. Somebody who is dead, who by our standards has no more hope, no more ability, there's nothing we can do now. And every time he raised someone from the dead, what did he do? Well, he waited until they were mourning. He waited until they're like, okay, there's no way this person can come back. There's no way. They are gone. And Jesus said, nope, they're just sleeping. Watch. And so it's kind of cool because this points back to a few different things. And I actually want to use Jesus' words here to show him pointing back in the Old Testament. And Jesus said in Mark chapter 12, 26 to 27, now as for the dead being raised, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the passage about the bush, how God said to him, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are badly mistaken. God didn't say I was. He said I am. God said that he is these. Jesus said that God is the God of the living. It's not a problem for him to bring people back if he wants to. And this was also a little bit of pointing back, because in the Old Testament, God gave some of his prophets the ability to bring people back. Elijah brought somebody back. Elisha brought somebody back. But everybody that was brought back eventually died still. In the future, we won't have to worry about that. And they knew this. They knew that in the future it wouldn't. In Isaiah 26, verse 19, it says, your dead will come back to life. Your corpses will rise up. Wake up and shout joyfully, you who live in the ground. For you will grow like plants drenched with morning dew, and the earth will bring forth its dead spirits. And they knew that God would continue to do this. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 said, many of those who sleep in the dusty ground will awake, some to everlasting life, and others to shame and everlasting abhorrence. And even as far back in time as Job, even Job knew that God would raise people in the end. Job 19, verses 25, the beginning of 27 says, Job says, as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that as the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God, whom I will see for myself, and whom my own eyes will behold, and not another. It wasn't a new concept to them that at some point God would permanently raise people to see him, to be with him. And like we saw in Daniel, depending on who was believing in him and who wasn't, that would depend on their eternal fate. They knew that this wasn't the end. They knew that even this death wasn't the final death. But only God could bring people back. And so when they were looking forward to the kingdom, they were looking forward to, just like the same hope we have, not somebody who's permanently gone, but like Jesus said, somebody who's sleeping for now, somebody who will be back later, somebody who we will see later with God. They knew this too. And so when Jesus was able to raise people from the dead, this was him saying, hey, guess what? I'm ready to show you guys that. I'm ready to show you guys that death isn't the end. And that was the ultimate form of healing miracles. There was one other category of miracles that was supposed to show who Jesus was and supposed to remind them of who God is. And that was control over nature. And the name of God that this one represents is El Shaddai. And El Shaddai means Lord God Almighty, the God of all things. So there are a couple of subcategories in this one. The first subcategory when it comes to control over nature is actually nature itself, physical nature. There are many, many, many examples in the Old Testament of God having control over nature. So one of the fun ones is, again, Exodus. And I really like going back to Exodus to show who God was, because he did so many miracles when he was proving himself to the people of Israel and to the world. And what did he do? They went up to a sea. They went up to a barrier, an uncrossable barrier. And God said, that's not a problem for me. And he parted the seas and he let them walk through on dry land. No person can do that. That is only from God. God also controlled storms and weather. Jesus controlled storms and weather. Why was that significant? Because they would know from their Bible that God was able to do this too. In Psalm 107, the psalmist is talking about all the great things God can do. And he was talking about how, depending on the people do one thing, God will respond this way or that way. And in 107:25, it says, he gave the order for a windstorm, and it stirred up waves of the sea. And then when the people called and asked for God, in verse 29, it says, he calmed the storm, and the waves grew silent. Who else calmed the storm and the waves grew silent? Jesus. But no one but Jesus and God can do that, because Jesus was from God. God also said in Amos chapter 4, verse 7, I withheld rain from you for 3 months before the harvest. I gave rain to one city, but not to another. One field would get rain, but the field that received no rain dried up. Now, none of us can control, it's only going to rain in this field, but not this field. But God can. Psalm 89:9 also said, you rule over the proud sea. When its waves surge, you calm them. And then I love in Psalm 135:7, he causes the clouds to arise from the end of the earth, makes his lightning bolts accompany the rain, and brings the winds out of his storehouses. He controls the weather. He has storehouses. He plans the weather. This isn't something that just happened. God has control over nature. So why was that important? Well, because they knew looking forward in the kingdom, they had lots of famine throughout the time of Israel. Today, we have times where we have hurricanes come. We have things come that destroy us and have us have problems. We lose crops. We lose lives. They had the same problems back then. But God said it wouldn't always be that way. He made them a promise in Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 34, starting in verse 25, he said, I will make a covenant of peace with them and will rid the land of wild beasts so that they can live securely in the wilderness and even sleep in the woods. I will turn them and the regions around my hill into a blessing. I will make showers come down in their season. They will be showers that bring blessing. The trees of the field will yield the fruit, and the earth will yield its crops. They will live securely on their land. They will know that I am the Lord. When I break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from the hand of those who enslave them, they will no longer be prey for the nations, and the wild beasts will not devour them. They will live securely, and no one will make them afraid. I will prepare for them a healthy planting. They will no longer be victims of famine in the land, and no longer bear the insults of nature. In the future, God will provide them in the kingdom with a land that is plentiful, fruitful, has rain at the right times, has famine never. Today, we can't say that. We know. What do we know? Well, if you live in this area, these storms are a part of life. If you live here, these storms are a part of life. Oh, it's a dry season? You just have to deal with it. God said, guess what? When I set up my kingdom, you won't just have to deal with it. I will bring you the rain when you need it. I will make everything grow. I will make sure that there is no famine in the land. And only the God Almighty, who can control the weather and control the storms, could do this. So there was actually one other thing that he controlled in nature besides just the physical nature. And that was control over animals. What did Jesus do? Put your nets in there. There's going to be a bunch of fish in there. Oh, we have to pay a tax? Pull a fish out of the river. There'll be a gold coin in its mouth. Why does that point back to God? Well, because only God could control animals. Think of Jonah. Jonah's a really fun thing because it shows God's control over all of nature. When Jonah rebelled, there was a storm. When he went, the storm went away. What did God use to save Jonah? A fish. A fish. God controlled a fish and caused it to keep Jonah alive. A really fun thing, and I just added this in because I was reading through Daniel, is Daniel in the lion's den. The lion's den was a particularly cool miracle of God because guess what? We know that animals are dangerous, animals are wild, and that lions are one of them. And like I just read, how he said that people will be able to live with the wild animals and be free. Well, guess what? These lions were starved lions. They were purposely not fed when somebody would be thrown in there to where their wild nature would take over and there was no way for somebody to be safe. And yet Daniel was in there for a day. And guess what happened? They did not attack him. God kept their mouth shut. Only God can control the wild animals. Only God can make things that shouldn't happen happen. So why is that cool? Well, like I just read, in the future kingdom, people won't have to fear wild animals. People won't have to fear nature because God will make us at peace with nature again. Later on in Ezekiel, he even says, starting in Ezekiel 47, in verses 9 and 10, every living creature which swarms where the river flows will live. There will be many fish, for these waters flow there. It will become fresh, and everything will live where the river flows. Fishermen will stand beside it, from En-gedi to Eglaim. They will spread nets. They will catch many kinds of fish, like the fish of the great sea. So, for the fishing miracles, they don't even have to go in their boats. They'll be on the shore and tossing nets in, and they'll pull aside many kinds of fish. But what about the rest of nature? Well, just like he promised in Ezekiel, the psalmists also knew that God would have them. In Psalm 8, verses 6 to 8, you appoint them, humanity, to rule over your creation. You have placed everything under their authority, including all the sheep and cattle, as well as the wild animals, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, and everything that moves through the currents of the sea. There will be a time in the future where there won't be division between humanity and nature. We won't have to fear that. I like Ezekiel saying, they will sleep in the woods peacefully. Now, when you go to the woods today, what do you have to do? Bear repellent, you have to bring all sorts of safety measures, you have to do that. It was no different back then. In their time, they had to travel in groups. They had to be cautious. There were these wild animals. In the kingdom, there won't be, because God will supernaturally control that. And so, what was the point of all these miracles? Well, I keep saying, Jesus was showing them, hey, I'm here. First of all, like, what's the point of the series? He was here to fulfill these prophecies. He was here to fulfill and say, hey, the blind will see, the lame will walk and talk. Guess what? I'm here. I just did that. I healed these people. Look. You guys are having problems with food. You're having problems with this. Well, that's not a problem. Let me give this to you. Nature's threatening to overtake you. There's storms coming. There's all sorts of problems. Well, not for God, not for me. He was here to fulfill those prophecies. And again, like I said today, he did many more miracles than were recorded. These ones were recorded. Why? So that we could jump and see God's promises, God's future promises. And they were supposed to be not just to us, but to the people who were living there witnessing these miracles. These were supposed to be Jesus saying, hey, I'm ready to do what's happening. Here's just a sneak peek of what will fully happen when you accept me. And just like I said the last 2 weeks, what happened? They rejected him, they denied him, and so he said, fine, now these ones are not going to happen now. Now these are still future. So, what does that mean? Well, what do we keep saying all week, every week in this series? There are still a bunch of future promises, right? God still has plans for the future. God still has promises. And in fact, the rest of the New Testament is filled with even more promises that he said, and he gave us even more clues and more ideas of what's going to happen in the future. And so we know that he will fulfill these, and so we can look forward to all these promises. They were looking forward to the promises when they only had these small glimpses. We have so much more knowledge of the future today, so many more promises. So, are we looking forward to those promises? Do we actually believe they can happen? And if so, what is our response going to be? Are we going to live as those who have hope in the future? Or are we going to live as those who are uncertain about the future? We know what's going to happen in the future. All we have to do is trust him and look forward to those promises.